everyone, Lou here. With October being the spooky season and Halloween just a few days away, I thought it'd be fun to talk about my favorite mythological creature, vampires. Today, let's talk about vampires in anime. Now, when I say I'm a huge vampire fan, I am a huge vampire fan. Lost Boys, Interview with a Vampire, and Bram Stoker's Dracula are all my favorite movies of all time, so to say I'm a vampire fan here is kind of an understatement. I guess if you guys ever want to know what team I was on when watching Twilight, it definitely wasn't the werewolves. The only thing about this list is that vampires have to be the central focus of the story or take up a large majority of the plot. Also, not every vampire anime in existence is going to be here. Specifically Korean because I haven't seen it yet, and Diabolic Lovers because frankly the constant harassment of the female lead makes me pretty uncomfortable. Alright, let's begin. Vampire Night. Okay, so on paper, Vampire Night is a pretty good interpretation of vampires. They can't go out in the sun, can only drink human blood or synthetic human blood, angst, and the only way to kill a vampire is with decapitation or a stab to the heart, and needing a special weapon to kill them in the first place. Pretty traditional and pretty neat on paper. Where Vampire Night goes a little off the deep end is its class system and incest being a totally cool thing with vampires. We're not talking about the British monarchy levels of incest where everyone is a 10th cousin. We're talking biological brother and sister incest, which is very nasty. Next is the vampire hierarchy system. There is purebloods, nobility, common vampire, and ex-human vampire. Purebloods basically being creatures who were born vampires. Where did vampires come from? They literally never tell you. This is an incest shoujo, so it's not like we're gonna get quality vampire lore here. Too busy creating unrequited love stories between fathers and daughters and siblings, I guess. The other really weird thing is that vampires can literally be hypnotized into forgetting they're a vampire, so they're essentially cured of vampirism until they get their memories back. At least, spoilers for this trashy shoujo, by the way, but Yuki literally had her memories erased of being a vampire and became an actual human until becoming a vampire when her memories came back. I mean, they do explain it, but geez, where the fuck did the fangs go? Visual Prison. This was from last year, and although I had plans to do a video for it at some point, it just kind of spiraled down into what started this video. Now, the vampires in Visual Prison are pretty unique. Apparently the rules of the vampires change depending on who has the moon's favor. They kind of borrowed from werewolf rules where vampires obey whatever the moon tells them, and apparently they do that by singing. This anime is kind of just a musical visual kei drug trip, but basically, there's a contest every few hundred years or so where vampires sing to the moon, and whoever gets all the teardrops from the moon or something will get to change the rules of vampirism or have a wish granted, I think? So for instance, when the story starts, the current rules is that vampires can only feed off each other and not humans, women are not allowed to be turned into vampires, and no one is allowed to turn anyone else into a vampire. Which doesn't make total sense because one of the characters was made when this rule was still in place, but oh well. No women being a vampire, by the way, is for two reasons. 1, because the only female vampire was Camilla, who was fucking crazy and too powerful because woman. 2, solely so the show can have a bunch of pretty boys and turn this into a pseudo-idol group, but also very gay. Vampires who go against the moon have their heart cracked, and it visually shows on their body by a red veiny crack thingy. If you keep disobeying the moon or do something really, really bad, then your heart will shatter and you'll die or something. They're also not affected by sunlight, I guess all inherit singing skills, and can easily disguise their vampiric features to humans. Oh, and Dhampir are also part of the lore. Dhampir are apparently super rare because of the whole females aren't allowed to turn or know about vampires thing. I'm not gonna explain how or why our lead is a Dhampir because that's basically the entire plot twist at the end, but just know it's confusing as shit. Overall, Visual Prison is like if someone was on cocaine and was watching a Visual Kei music video. Feels like insane ramblings and sometimes hilariously weird, but there's some joy in there. Don't know where, but it's somewhere. Hey, I have to say, this is a very unique interpretation of vampires. And the songs were nice. Jojo's Bizarre Adventures. Although the only real long-standing vampire in Jojo's is Dio, I still really like the interpretation of vampires within Jojo's. Vampires in Jojo's came from a stone mask created by Pillarmen thousands of years ago, where I guess human blood triggers a trap-like device on the mask and turns them into a vampire. They don't really explain how that works, but I guess having a little bit of Pillarmen blood just turns people into vampires or something. There's also the classic way of needing another vampire's blood to drip over an open wound to turn someone else into a vampire, which is how Dio turns Vanilla Ice into a vampire in part 3. I mean, obviously there are other vampire characters in parts 1 and 2. I think Dio has such a strong presence though as a vampire that he's kind of the only vampire we do need. The only thing about vampires in JoJo's is outside of the basic need of human blood to survive, burning in the sunlight and decapitation not being a kill point, the rest is kind of inconsistent. Like, part 1 Dio can turn people to ice and has laser eye vision. Where the hell was that in part 3? Because I guarantee you that'd be super useful against Jotaro and their whole fight when Jotaro couldn't stop moving. Then again, I know Araki has always had this thing where you kind of have to ignore shit that doesn't make any sense because Araki just does what looks cool, and honestly, I say let him. Before we get to our final entry, here's some honorable mentions. These are series where there's very clear vampire inspiration, or vampires take a back seat to the main plot. Demon Slayer. Although they are obviously demons, there are traits with demons that are often associated with vampires, specifically burning in the sunlight and newborns of the species being incredibly violent upon first awakening. There are also demons who can manage to suppress their urges to eat human flesh and instead of survive off human blood, and thus honorable mention vampires in my eyes. Many vampire stories also involve people turning because they were sickly, and we see quite a few characters were turned into demons solely because they were dying of diseases or injuries. So in my eyes, I see demons and Demon Slayer as like cousins to vampires in this case. Black Butler. Although the Bizarre Dolls behaved like zombies in the initial appearance of them in the anime, the manga dives more into them where they need human blood to survive. Not to mention that the real CL is often portrayed as being in a coffin, and Yana Toboso even drew him as a vampire for Halloween. So I think Yana herself confirmed that the Bizarre Dolls now are basically vampires. 7 Deadly Sins. We only really see Gilda and the explanation for how vampirism works in the series, so it's kinda bad, but it's also cool, I guess. I mean, Gilda doesn't burn in the sun, so there's no tragic curse or something, but she still needs to feed off blood to survive. Something about she can mind control people when she first bites them too. Felt like a cop-out for her to save the day last minute, but oh well. They get an honorable mention though, solely for existing, because I did not expect vampires to exist in this series. Tokyo Ghoul. Yes, I know ghouls are completely different from vampires, but the way they're biologically described is at least similar to vampires. Even the way half-ghouls are born is similar to Dampier lore from other works in books and film. The only thing is an organ transfer turning you into a half-ghoul, which, like, somehow gaining a vampire's pancreas would not turn you into a vampire. Also, don't lie to me. You know we were all inspired by Tokyo Ghoul when writing vampires. Hell, I fully admit I based my vampire OCs off of Tokyo Ghoul, and I ain't afraid to admit that. And now for the grand finale of this video. Hellsing, one of the most famous vampire anime series ever made. Hellsing vampires are also pretty traditional, but also seem to follow much older legends about needing the blood of virgins, which likely seems to stem about legends of Elizabeth Bathory. In this interpretation, the human needs to be a virgin and have their blood drained completely by a vampire of the opposite gender to turn them. If a vampire tries to turn someone who isn't a virgin, they'll turn into a blood-craving zombie. Sounds like social commentary to me, but maybe I'm just looking too far into it, so I'll leave that up to you guys. As for weaknesses, again, it seems to be based off earlier legends of vampires that were chosen for Hellsing's vampires. We have a weakness to running water, and holy relics are considered pretty deadly, although for some silver was added? I've seen some vampire media before introduce silver, and I don't get it. Silver is supposed to be for werewolves, isn't it? Either way, the vampires in Hellsing are pretty cool to me. I view Hellsing's vampires to be one of the best in this video actually, because it hits all my favorite hallmarks of what makes a real vampire to me. Of course, I know that's just me being subjective, of course. Overall, vampires are just fucking cool to me. I love the torturous angst, that the main trait of a vampire is being sexy, and you can't lie that there's something really cool about vampires. You guys let me know down below what you think of this video though. If you guys want to request another ghoulish classic monster next Halloween, I don't really think I can make an answer to that request because I'm not a personal fan of werewolves, and witches in general don't seem to have a strict code to follow like vampires and werewolves. Hope you guys enjoyed the video though. Let me know down below what you think. Do you love vampires? Do you hate them? Is there another mythological creature you like more? As always, let me know down below. Hey guys, thanks for watching! If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new. If any of you would like to help support my channel in any possible way, my Ko-fi page is down below in the description, along with all of my social media. For any subscribers, new or old, who'd like to help with video ideas, or maybe just want to talk about anime or something, I have a fan server linked down below. See you next time!